So, some people are able to move on extremely quickly after a long term relationship. It doesn't matter if it's been 8 weeks, 8 months, or 8 years. But I'm going to tell you why there's a fundamental difference between when a man moves on very quickly and when a woman moves on very quickly. I just saw a creator on here talking about the end of her 8 year long relationship and finding out that 3 months after they broke up, her ex already is seeing someone, and she's distraught by the fact that he's moved on so quickly, but also really confused. So let's talk about it. Hi, my name is Stella. I'm a trauma attachment and couple/relationship therapist, and I talk about all things dating. So this is the main difference. When a man moves on fairly quickly, 9 times out of 10, it's because he wants to avoid feeling the pain. He uses his next attachment or his next partner or whoever it is he's seeing as a distraction to avoid grieving the relationship. He will delay the grieving process as much as he can. And it doesn't help that their guy friends don't really push for the grieving process to happen. Instead, they usually encourage their friend to go out, to get with other women, to drink, play games, whatever it may be. More distractions. And society has conditioned men to believe that they need to be stoic to be strong. So they don't know how to process emotions usually, and they don't know how to communicate their emotions in many cases. And their friends, their peers, don't really know how to hold space for those emotions. It can sometimes feel uncomfortable. This is not to say all men, but usually when their guy friends are pushing them to do all of these things after a breakup, it's because they themselves would also handle a breakup the exact same way. They're not going to sit in a circle and cry it out with their buddies and talk about their emotions and how hurt they are. So they suppress it both alone and with their friends. Many times their friends encourage that or enable it. But when a woman moves on very quickly after ending or getting broken up with from a long-term relationship, the reason is honestly the complete opposite. Women, we've been conditioned by society to allow ourselves to feel, to sit with and process and experience and communicate our emotions. So yes, there are women that don't move on very quickly. There are women that mourn and grieve and are a mess for months after the breakup. But I'm not talking about those women. I'm talking about the women that get out of long-term relationships and they're dating, honestly, instantly or ready to meet people. And that can seem confusing because you typically expect women to be sitting with a pint of ice cream, crying and sobbing with rom-coms and their best friends, listening to Taylor Swift on repeat. And again, that exists. That is a reality that exists because, like I said, we have been conditioned to allow ourselves to feel our emotions. But for the women who don't necessarily grieve, they're not crying, they're not a mess, they're not having sleepless nights, they're not isolating themselves, it's not necessarily because they're suppressing their emotions like men. It's because those women have already grieved the relationship before they left the relationship. The whole saying goes, you grieve before you leave. You emotionally detach before you physically detach. They have felt and processed and communicated their emotions well into the relationship far before they left it. So therefore, it's not a form of suppression because they weren't avoiding the pain. They've already experienced the pain. So by the time they get out, they've already went through the motions. They've already went through the grieving process. Not to say they aren't going to grieve a bit afterwards. I mean, it is a long-term relationship, but a lot of the times they experience relief, they experience freedom, they experience a calm nervous system. It can feel weird because you can feel very detached and numb, but it's not because you're some heartless human being. It's not because you're avoiding, but you've already done that process before making the final decision to walk away. Men don't typically do this. So yes, both men and women can move on fairly quickly after a long-term relationship, but again, the reasons are very opposite. The man that moves on fairly quickly instead of going through the mourning process will experience the emotions like getting hit by a truck. Because emotions have one purpose on this earth and it's to be felt, and they will catch up to him eventually. Because he did not take the time to grieve immediately after the breakup, and in many cases did not grieve during the relationship like most women do. So there's this common misconception that just because the feelings eventually catch up to the men, it will also catch up to the women who move on fairly quickly after the breakup of a long-term relationship, and that's not true. Because women, whether it's immediately after the breakup or during the relationship, actually take the time to grieve. That's why you see women fall into either one of those categories. It's never, almost never the case that a woman suppresses her emotions and avoids and distracts and then has the grief hit her later on.